I wanted to talk a little bit about Marie and Bruce in this video. The play came out in 1979, 1980, and since that time it's attracted a lot of commentary and a lot of performances. It's especially popular among university students and done quite frequently in colleges with acting classes as well as in formal performances. And the play seems to reveal qualities of dramatic literature and theater history that I discussed in earlier videos regarding the changes that took place after the 1960s. The author is Wallace Shawn. He was born in New York City in 1943 and is the son of William Shawn, who was the editor of the New Yorker magazine for a number of years back in the 1960s, 70s, and into the 1980s. Shawn had a very privileged atmosphere and had access to the rich cultural life of New York City growing up, and then went on to a very prominent education here in the United States and also in at I believe it was Cambridge University in England. He's been a playwright for, well, I think since around 1970, and also been very active in the movie industry as an actor. He has performed in numerous movies, usually playing this little guy, kind of like Bruce in Marie and Bruce, characters like that who aren't the center of the action in the film, but nevertheless have a crucial role because their comic qualities are useful to other characters. So he's been in a lot of movies in these character roles, small character roles, and is you've probably seen him in numerous movies without knowing that's Wallace Shawn. And he's also been in some, he does a lot of voiceovers. If you've seen Toy Story, he's the voice of Rex, and been in innumerable TV shows as a guest actor playing these friendly comic characters who come in and set up an opportunity for humorous incidences with the main characters, playing doctors or lawyers or small roles that crop up here and there. So he's had quite a bit of work as an actor. As a playwright, he's also been very busy, and Marie and Bruce is probably not his most famous play. That is most likely Aunt Dan and Lemon from 1985, a very strange play, and I happen to think it's probably his best play too, in which he deals with a sick, invalided woman who justifies her enthusiasm for Nazism. She does it in a way that's, at the same time, elicits a kind of sympathy from the audience. So the play had a lot of controversy as a result of the way in which he portrayed this character with whom he himself has no political sympathy. Shawn is an interesting playwright because he's very interested in exploring the nature of sympathy and the way in which people feel toward each other, and are able to understand the feelings of a person outside of themselves. Sean was also in My Dinner with Andre from 1981, a Louis Malle film, which is nothing but one long dinner conversation between Sean and Andre Gregory, a theater director in New York City. And I think I mentioned this film when talking about Grotowski. Much of the film discusses Andre Gregory's personal experience of studying and working with Grotowski and the transcendental spiritual experience it was for Gregory, while Sean is the skeptical New York intellectual, you might say, who doesn't really believe that Grotowski's magic achieves what Andre Gregory says it does. With Marie and Bruce, Sean established his identity as a playwright. It was the first play that really made an impact, first play by him that really made an impact into his seriousness as an author. The play demonstrates some of the freedoms that the theater gained as a result of all of the turbulence of the 1960s, and also some of the consequences. It's a small-scale play. It's not very big. The scene is always modest, and he does not expect much in the way of powerful scenic support for the action, and nor does he have much in the way of physical action between the actors. Mostly they're just talking to each other. Alright, now that I've fixed the problem with the camera, which had to do with the memory card not being available, twofold, had to switch memory cards, back online. Alright, I was talking about Marie and her interests. She speaks to the audience, and it's memorable insofar as she begins with this violent denunciation of her husband to the audience. Let me tell you something. I find my husband so goddamn irritating that I'm planning to leave him. And that's a fact. And then she says to Bruce, who's sleeping, yes, I'm sick of you. Do you get it? You're driving me insane. I can't stand living with you for one more minute. I'm sick of it. I hate it. I hate my life with you. Do you hear me? I hate it. And then Bruce comes in and says, oh, hello, darling. Is it time to get up? And throughout we get this contrast between Marie and Bruce, whereby Marie is this furious, constantly furious and unhappy, restless, and full of heaping insults on Bruce. And Bruce is this very mild and gentle soul for whom all of these violent words seem to bounce off of him, and he just goes on imperturbably with his own agenda, and that sets up this supposedly or seemingly sadomasochistic relation between Marie and Bruce, where she's the one filled with violent energy and he's the one who's laid back and very passive. But the way in which they exchange words is deceptive, and Bruce has a kind of strength that seems, I wouldn't say that Marie doesn't acknowledge it, she seems to resent it because it works well for him. He's not worried that she's going to leave him. He's not worried about any of the things she says about him, and she's constantly degrading him and pointing out what she thinks is his lack of masculinity or manliness, and then he doesn't seem perturbed. So something's not right between what she says about him and how the action plays out, and with Bruce having his own kind of strength. And later on in the play, Wallace Shawn does an expert job of dramatizing this situation in a different way, this kind of mistaken idea of who's the strong one in the play. And that's in the restaurant scene where a couple of guys come in, and one of the Bert, one of the people sitting in the table next to him, speaks very graphically about his illness, and he talks in this very open, clear, graphic, and unpleasant way about this internal feeling in himself. It was an extraordinary thing, he says to Ed, because I'd been feeling worse and worse for several days. I mean, I'd feel just fine, and then I'd eat, and I'd have this sensation that somehow the food was just rotting in my stomach. I mean, something wasn't happening correctly in there. And then I'd suddenly get these sharp, shooting pains, like a sort of flash, like lightning, through the entire length of my asshole somehow, you know? And then by Friday afternoon, there was this whole new sensation. My stomach started giving these little leaps, these lurches like this, and I would feel like going to the bathroom really badly. But then in about 2 seconds, the sensation would go away, and I'd feel all right again. And I wouldn't feel like going to the bathroom anymore. Well, finally, late in the afternoon, I felt one of these lurches that instead of going away, it just sort of took a hold of my gut, just sort of stayed there, and I sort of really rushed into the bathroom. And he goes on and talks about it, and then finally he said, well, you can imagine how I felt. I looked down at the stool and was covered with blood. And it says, my God, how awful. But then Bruce comes in and says, excuse me, I'm sorry. Excuse me, you see, we're eating our meal. You what? I say, we're eating our meal. In your conversation, we couldn't help hear. What? What? We can't, we're eating, Bert. Is this guy trying to tell me I'm talking too loudly? And Bruce says, well, sir, and then says, pardon me, can I make a suggestion? Would you mind? I'd like you to return to your table. That way we won't have any kind of trouble. And Bruce says, oh, I see. Yes, oh yes. Well, if that's the way you feel, well then, yes. I see, all right. Fine. Fine. Well, all right, yes. All right, Well, it seems like Bruce, in that little instance, is deeply intimidated by these two people after he approaches them to tell them to shut up or quiet down. And it has to do with this notion of feeling. He's feeling bad, this guy Bert, and telling everybody about it, and Bruce doesn't want to hear about it. He's got enough listening to Marie. And then he approaches them, and yet he seems to walk away vanquished by just the other guy. Pardon me, can I make a suggestion? Would you mind? I'd like you to return to your table. That way we won't have any kind of trouble. Is this a threat or what? He just makes a statement, Ed. And Bruce goes back. And then Marie says to him, you eat shit, Bruce. You're a worthless turd. I mean, really scalding condemnation of him. And he says, yes, well, okay. Okay. And Marie says, I'm sorry I met you. I'm sorry I knew you. Of all the men I ever knew, you turn out to be the worst. And the incredible thing is, I never loved you. So he's going back to an equally unpleasant conversation. And yet, it seems like Bruce, in the end, is the one who wins out on all of this exchange of feelings at a very visceral level. We never hear from Bert after Bruce approaches the table. They're gone. They just disappear, and he seems to have gotten his way while seeming to have given in to them or not shown any resolve against them. And so what the characters say to each other is contradicted by what actually happens on the stage. This happens throughout the play. Marie says she's going to leave Bruce. Bruce, but by the end it's clear she isn't going to really leave him. And Bruce says he's going to stick with Marie, he's going to take care of her, but then he goes off and does things on his own without telling Marie, such as the woman he goes into the diner and has orders something and sees a woman and that excites him, and then he goes to a hotel room with the purpose of masturbating rather than trying to make contact with this woman who he regards as insane anyway. Then sees another woman through the window, and all of this Marie doesn't know about. Only people who know about it are the audience. And Marie does that too. She talks about all kinds of things she never shares with Bruce, and she seems to be in a more mellow or tender or relaxed mood when she does talk about these things that only the audience knows about, when she goes into the park, and then when she falls asleep at the party, and recalls the dream she had, and out come all kinds of feelings about Bruce that she doesn't share with Bruce. But even so, at the party, she says things to Bruce that she doesn't say to Bruce ever when they're alone together. That he looks like a god, that he's extremely attractive. And she almost, or she does disclose some intimation of jealousy when Bruce mentions another woman and describes in detail what kind of sexual experience he had with her. So you cannot trust the words of the characters to describe accurately their feelings toward each other throughout the play. This happens with all linguistic or speech encounters between the characters, and it becomes clear after a while that, or even after the first monologue with Marie describing her wandering into the park and encountering the dog and having this dream, she seems to fall asleep, but then that's contrasted with Bruce falling asleep at the end and being asleep at the beginning of the play as well, so that the characters seem exhausted by this exchange of feeling, but what is the reason for their exhaustion? I think it has to do with the frustration they feel in their inability to make language as accurate as possible regarding what they're really feeling. And they seem to drift into this kind of fall asleep or fall away as a result of some recognition that their words have in effect betrayed them in their relations with others. So Marie is a torrent of resentment, vicious insult, but she's almost another person when she's talking to the audience. And she seems to find her most intensive feelings when she's hurting Bruce. And he does not respond to her with the qualities of a hurt person. And I guess we don't have enough knowledge about these two characters who don't seem to have very important positions in life. They don't have any jobs, and they're sort of trying to cobble together their lives with each other as well as professionally. And yet despite the untrustworthiness of the language that they share, they do seem bound to each other because of that language. And I'm going to go to page 50. Well, page 55. When Bruce says, "Well, darling, you know you shouldn't leave me. I mean, you know you shouldn't leave me." "Well, Bruce," she says, "I'm planning to leave you." And Bruce says, "Oh, well, darling, it's a little funny just to tell me this, isn't it? I mean, what brings this up just at this moment? You see, I mean, what have I done? We've just gone to a certain restaurant for dinner, and I understood it to be one that you like. And as far as I can tell, it's lived up to the expectation at least 100%, I would say." "Oh, Bruce, you're funny. You really are." "So you don't actually care that I'm leaving you then?" "Well, you're not really not leaving me, darling. I mean, you feel you would like to, but you really aren't actually leaving, if you see what I mean." "You don't think I'm leaving?" "Well, are you?" "Yes, I am, Bruce. I really am." "Well, darling, I mean, you know you can't leave me. I mean, don't you know that I love you, darling? I mean, really, after all, love me? You love me? Bruce, you don't even know the meaning of the word. You don't know the meaning of the word, Bruce." "Oh, really? I always thought I did. How very, very strange. Bruce, don't you know that you're not a living person?" "I'm sorry, darling. I thought I was." So, in any case, in this little exchange, we have Bruce, in his usual role of being impervious and imperturbably affected by Marie's supposed, her intentions, what she says she's going to do. He doesn't believe it, and tells her on the contrary that he loves her. He loves this woman who is full of rage and insult and degrading language toward him. And is that true? Does he love her? I don't know. If so, then I think that Sean's purpose is to show the way in which love works through an exchange of language that turns out to be very complex. Love is this feeling that gets articulated in this very convoluted way in which it is very difficult to know what you mean to say without causing some misunderstanding or misalignment of feeling between you as speaker and someone else who is listening, and vice versa. Another point that Sean does is contrast a feeling with very visceral response to life. So he has these scenes where either Marie or Bert or Bruce himself, they are not feeling well. It seems like they're sick or that something's wrong with their bodies. And Sean is, I think, very skillful here as in other plays in showing this connection between feeling well or feeling bad physically and the emotional condition generally of the person who is either feeling well or feeling bad. And that's demonstrated by both Marie and Bruce having these little adventures during the day of the, ends up with going to the party, where Marie goes out and has this adventure in the garden. Bruce goes out, has his lunch with Roger, and Bruce is feeling well, feeling really great. He goes to the party and it's a great party. He's feeling very well. Maria, on the other hand, gets sick. She doesn't like being there, or she's feeling ill. So then they leave and go to the restaurant and encounter the sick man there. And Marie is, and Bruce is feeling good about the restaurant, but Marie's feeling bad again, and it's a very visceral body kind of idea of emotion built around whether you like something you hear, or like someone else, or feel attracted to them or not, and the language you use to degrade their attractiveness or enhance it, and how that language does not accurately represent the condition of attraction or feeling well or disgust that's put into the words of the speakers. So let me wrap up here for my discussion with Marie and Bruce. Sean is dramatizing how people are bound together by their understanding that they always mean something other than what they say. And they can never quite say what they really mean. They adjust their language constantly because language has some power to encode within it emotions that the speakers and listeners don't acknowledge. In other words, language encodes more feeling in it than anyone intends or acknowledges or accepts. Words carry with them all of this feeling that is contrary to the feeling we want to put into words, or the feeling that people take from the words. And that uncertainty about what feeling is embedded or encoded into language is, in the end, what binds people together and keeps them close, you might say. That's contrary to the intuitive way of thinking about it, whereby if you say things clearly and people understand you clearly, we have greater understanding and better, more harmonious relationships. But the play says that's not really the case. That what binds us together is the power of language to put into it more feeling than we can control as speakers and listeners. And this impulse, this urge, this desire to exert some kind of greater control over what it is we're saying through these I means and what I really mean to say, and being as conscious as we can about how difficult it is to know what feelings are in us, that is what binds people together. And that's an imaginative, innovative, original understanding of how love or the most powerful emotions connect us to each other, as well as create this this tension between us, and often contradiction of what it is we really need to say. So the play does, in a very short time, make a very big point. In the next videos I'll be talking about African American dramatists and how they have worked to accommodate new realities in the theater, and been a very big contribution.